Welcome to the Winter Show. This is the 70th edition of the show. We're thrilled to welcome you all here. And we're delighted to be partnering with FREDERIC Magazine on this wonderful panel about the Sleeper-McCann House. So we're can't wait to turn it over to our panelists, but first I'd like to introduce them. We have Kate Bolick, who is the contributing editor of FREDERIC Magazine, and she also is an author. And then we have Vin Cipolla, who is the president and CEO of the New England Historic Foundation. So I'm going to turn it over to both of you, but a hearty warm welcome and thank you so much for helping to make our 70th anniversary such a special one.
Well, first of all, Helen, thank you so much. And to Veronica and Emily, thank you so much. And congratulations on this year's show. It has been absolutely spectacular. And Kate, the very special evening to be with you. Big fan. I know many of you are. So thank you. Thank you. And thank you. Thank you. And thank you, FREDERIC Magazine, for having us this evening. I'm Vin Cipolla, as Helen said, President and CEO of Historic New England. We have a couple of our very devoted trustees with us here this evening. Jim Honeywell, who's in the back. Jim is the chair of our preservation committee. So if Kate and I get stuck on any of the content as we talk about some of Historic New England's exceptional museums, Jim, you're going to bail us out, right? Okay. And Ed Gerber is right here. Ed is the chair of our easement committee. Historic New England holds preservation easements on 125 exceptional properties in New England. And Ed also has established two programs in the state of Connecticut where he lives. One is a lecture series and will be in Fairfield, Connecticut, February 8th at the Fairfield Museum for discussion on climate change and preservation. And also the Edward F. Gerber Grants Program, which is a competitive program doing very important preservation work in the state of Connecticut. So thank you, Ed. And also an important member of the Historic New England family, Nancy Lukish, is here. And thank you, Nancy, for your support. And Nancy is the board chair of another very important cultural organization, but one where you can eat the art, and that's the James Beard Foundation. So thank you very much, Nancy. Okay. For those of you that don't know Historic New England, who knew, right? We have 38 exceptional museums across New England. We are the oldest, the largest, and the most comprehensive independent preservation organization in the United States. And we have, as I just mentioned, 38 exceptional properties across the region, really illustrating the extraordinary history of this part of the country here in the Northeast New England. Some of them, I mean, I'm not going to show you 38, but Gropius House, I'm sure many of you have been there in Lincoln, Massachusetts, built in 1938. Got my data point right on that. The Eustace Estate in Milton, Massachusetts. Roseland Cottage in Woodstock, Connecticut. Roseland's interior, since we're here to talk about interior design a little bit, is it really intact from its period. It's quite an astonishing property. We also host at this property what is one of New England's largest crafts festivals every year, which is in October. If you don't know this quiet corner of Connecticut, Northeast Connecticut, it's a very special environment. And Hamilton House, I'm supposed to love all 38 children equally, but I have a thing for Hamilton House. It's quite an intoxicating property on the Salmon Falls River in South Berwick, Maine, just a little bit outside of Portsmouth, and it's got just beautiful gardens. Well, Hamilton actually is in a tie with Watson and KC Farms. These two magnificent properties look at each other, face each other over the Narragansett. Watson Farm raises sheep, and this last spring took about 25 people out there right after the arrival of about 78 baby lambs. And our farmer, Max, said that he assisted in the delivery of half of them. So Max can do anything. I'm not giving you his last name because I don't want him to get any offers. But it really is it's just a astonishingly beautiful place. Casey Farm is fully in production for organic produce, chickens. It's one of the largest CSAs in New England, and again, incredibly beautiful. This year, that is Thomas Woltz. He is a celebrated landscape architect and such a dear friend. We had the second annual Historic New England Summit in Providence, Rhode Island, where Thomas was a speaker. And this is a convening of the preservation community across New England, but also participants from 14 states and really around the world. Over 200 organizations were represented. And it was really a remarkable 2.5 days, really, for the second year in a row, where we are bringing folks together around the importance of preservation in our communities. A little bit of summit stuff, and just photo montage of. This is Miranda Massey. If you haven't been down to the Climate Museum in Lower Manhattan, really do visit. Miranda is a genius and really has imaginatively used the arts and culture to really create engagement around the climate crisis, and does really fantastic, remarkably creative programming. Always have culture, a little cultural moment at our conferences. I say always, we've only had 2 conferences so far, but year one, we featured a performance by Norfolk Music, which is the summer school for the Yale School of Music in Norfolk, Connecticut. And this year, we had just a magical concert from musicians from the Marlborough Music Festival, which is in Marlborough, Vermont. Culture is what binds us, which connects us as communities, keeps our cultural fabric intact. We all know this. And this part of the world, and New England in particular, is remarkably blessed with having so many festivals, as we know, summer festivals, which from theater to music to artist residencies and so much more. It's the highest concentration of arts festivals of any geographic place in the United States by far. And one of the things we like to do at Historic New England is put up a really big tent and celebrate the richness of the region we call home. Trip Evans, the happy fellow here, is a marvelous art historian, and he is finishing a book and an exhibition called The Importance of Being Furnished. And it will open at our galleries in Milton at the Eustis Estate in June. And it's a book and an exhibition about 4 bachelor homes. 2 of them are Historic New England History Museums, and the other 2 are collaborators, where Tripp really explores the bachelor aesthetic and the sort of design approach and framework for a different way of creating a domestic setting. So it's going to be, I think, quite fantastic. This is just showing friends here, but I have to say, Roseanne Haggerty's, this is a name that may be familiar to many New Yorkers, because Roseanne is one of the really leading thinkers on the unhoused. She's done breathtaking work in New York. She's a MacArthur genius in the issue of homelessness, and she was a speaker at our summit this year, talking about the connection between and the leverage, what can be provided through preservation in order to provide housing by reclaiming, obviously, existing building stock. We, in addition to all the fabulous stats that I opened with about historic New England, we also have the world's largest collection of New England artifacts. So that's good. And we have close to 150,000 decorative arts objects. There's a little bit of debate right now exactly what the number is. It's definitely like north of 130,000. So I think we're going with 150 at the moment, but it is absolutely remarkable. And 1.5 million archival documents. About half of our collection sits in the homes that help illustrate, show those objects in proper context. And the other half are in a warehouse facility that we own in Haverhill, Massachusetts, which is in the process now of being transformed to something quite extraordinary. And I will tell you a little bit about that. Just a few interior images of our facility in Haverhill. So these two buildings are owned by Historic New England. They are behemoth structures. This is obviously a vintage postcard photograph. When they were last under the same owner, they comprised what was the world's largest shoe manufacturing facility. And now they are owned by us. The building on this side, closest to me, is called the Lang Building, and that's where the Historic New England Objects Collection is. And the building closest to Kate is the newly acquired building that we have some plans for. We have plans for the whole thing, actually. Yeah, it's 150,000 objects, so just another shot of so 400 years of in terms of settler material, if you will, 400 years of wedding dresses, shoes, 2,500 pieces of adornment, some of the best furniture ever made, 400 years of art, ephemera, and also a growing group of indigenous objects as well, not only here in Haverhill, but also at our properties. So the site for this assembly is here in Haverhill, Massachusetts, which is 30 miles from Boston, on the mighty Merrimack River in the Merrimack Valley, which was in its heyday an industrial powerhouse. Haverhill had been referred to as the Queen Slipper City because of the beautiful footwear that came out of this place, and some of the finest footwear ever designed and made was made in this location. Historic New England owns those two buildings that I was just referring to, and also 3 vacant parcels of property in this district, in this enclave. And we are right at the doorstep, right there at the doorstep of commuter rail and Amtrak. Haverhill sits between 2 interstate highways, 495 and 95. There are 3 international airports within an hour. There are 7 regional airports. We own one of those airports. And so it's quite an extraordinary setting. And our aspiration is to really create a center, the Historic New England Center for Preservation and Collections, making what was sort of a hidden collection, a hidden archive, available to the public, and really bringing a there for preservation in New England. It is a colossal size development. It's hard to appreciate from an aerial like this, but the full developable property is north of 600,000 square feet. To give you a sort of an analog or an example, Massimoka is 280,000 square feet. So this is a big thing that we're doing, and we are so proud to be working with the city of Haverhill, which is a marvelous community, a diverse community of fabulous people, a lot of makers and artists, to really bring about something remarkable, I think, here right downtown, in downtown. Haverhill, as a community, is a proxy for so many other Haverhills, so many other places like it across the Northeast. Urban renewal came through for the promise of, glistening new development and easy parking. They tore down all kinds of architecturally significant municipal buildings, industrial buildings, residential buildings, and the dirt, the empty lots that Historic New England has acquired right in this location is scar tissue from urban renewal. The buildings never came. Those glistening new structures never arrived. So it's it's a Swiss cheese city like so many others that have gone through a similar thing, and we are very proud to be able to make a contribution to help bring this fabric, this density, this walkability, this livability back to downtown Haverhill. So it's another view of the Lang Building and the Burgess Building on the T and Amtrak stop. So we hope soon you'll all come and see us. Come anytime. We would love to have you. Touring our collections is a jaw-dropping experience, frankly, is what everybody says. It's really true. And as this whole project comes online, it's really going to be thrilling. At our first summit, we invited three internationally known architectural firms to help us imagine the possibilities for this district. And by having a provocation such as this, it really opened up people's minds to what might be possible. Ten Burke is the firm of Deborah Burke, who's the Dean of the School of Architecture at Yale. And the architects thought about Historic New England's own program use for its collections, but also master planning thinking. This is Hollery Yoon, located in Cambridge, Mass., really activating through public art. These presentations are all online. They're absolutely fascinating. They're very sweeping in terms of their planning and design ideas. This is Brandon Haw, architecture. An aspiration for all of this thinking and in our thinking is to really have a study center and a living archive for all of this work. And there are many precedents, of course, around the world. A few of us recently came back. Mr. Gerber was there, from Milan to look at other industrial spaces that have been adapted for cultural use. Pirelli factory building, some of you know these things. A distillery, which is now an iconic part of the Prada Foundation. Its campus in Milan, the Armani silos, and more. It was quite inspiring to visit these places and hear from the leaders who helped make them happen. And the last thing I'll just say as part of an overview, and then get into a little bit more directly into the topic, is Historic New England has an initiative called Recovering New England's Voices, where we bring in a class of scholars every year to really help us investigate the stories that have not been told, to pull out of our collections those objects about the lives of people who are associated with our history museum properties, but those lives were never really in our narrative experience, weren't really brought forward to the public. We have radically changed that in the last few years. It's very exciting. Stories of enslaved people who've lived and worked on our properties, immigrant families, really delving into the very deep histories of these places, leveraging, bringing out the objects that help illuminate these stories, and also working with our Indigenous partners to also be sure that we're faithful to the origins of these places. And that brings us to Beauport.
You want me to start?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for that. This news of the Haverhill Center is incredibly exciting. I grew up on the Merrimack River in a town called Newburyport, which is just like, how is it 20 minutes away from Haverhill?
Yes.
And so I grew up on the mouth of the Merrimack River. And when I first saw this news, I really just like fell out of my chair. I read it in the Boston Globe when I was home visiting my dad, and it's just extraordinary what you're doing, and the kind of attention that Vin is bringing to historic New England. I've also profited from, because I'm an old house enthusiast. I tend to visit old houses of the writers I admire. So I've spent a lot of time at Edith Wharton's The Mount in the Berkshires, Louisa May Alcott's house in Concord, Massachusetts, a historic New England property, the Sarah Orne Jewett house near the Hamilton House in Berwick, Maine. But I had never heard of Beauport until a couple of years ago. A friend, and the reason why this is striking is because Beauport is in Gloucester, which is just 30 minutes from Newburyport. So I grew up a stone's throw from this incredible property, but had never heard of it before because it's the person who is behind it, Henry Davis Sleeper, is not a famous writer. So it just, never came into my attention. And then a friend went to visit it and texted me afterward and said, "Oh my God, I just went to this place. It is so you have to go see this place." So I did. And and then I immediately contacted Emma, my editor at Frederic, and said, "We have to write about this place." It's insane that I didn't know. So Henry Davis Sleeper, I have a few notes. He was born 1874, died 1934, too young, age 56. He's considered one of America's first professional interior decorators. He bought the land here. This is on Gloucester Point, overlooking the harbor, in 1907 when he was almost 30, and he was in Boston. It was originally a summer retreat for himself and his mother, and then eventually became a primary residence. So it's shingled roof and stone walls with all kinds of turrets and a belfry, and it's a very kind of whimsical, magical space. Originally he built it as 22 rooms, and over time, it grew to be 10,000 feet, more than 40 rooms, and each one is devoted to a specific idea, either an historical figure or a decorative trend or something that had caught Henry Davis Sleeper's enthusiasm or imagination. So there you see it's directly on the water. It's an unbelievable spot. So this is his octagon room. So he was a really close friend of Isabella Stewart Gardner's, the public arts patron. And in 1921, he wrote her a letter from France. I wrote down, you've got some swag here, and I believe there's an issue of the FREDERIC magazine with our article about it. And so I'm going to quote myself. So I not only called this house a self-portrait rendered in furniture and decorative items. That's as revealing as any cache of letters or diaries. And then here's a quote from Sleeper when in 1921 he's in France. He writes to his friend Isabella. He says, "I'm planning to make a new room at Gloucester. Of course, I have all the details visualized and I'm enjoying it accordingly." And what it was for was this. He'd been collecting red painted tin, which was a form of what is it called? Just tinware, I think, but a form of Japanese lacquerware, like pretending to be, like knockoff Japanese lacquerware. And so he'd collected a ton of it. And that's one of the striking things about Sleeper as a decorator, was that he was a very enthusiastic collector of everyday items at a time when most Gilded Age elites were obsessed with collecting European antiques, but his was all Americana. And so, or in this case, Frenchicana. But this tinware. So this is his octagon room. It's painted black. It was the Murillo Boada, his first apartment. He painted it black, inspired by this specific room.
Also really into salvage, right?
Yes. So, yep. So the man
himself.
They called him Harry. Okay, go on. Oh, and so this is great. So I loved all of the interior when I went to this space, but I loved just as much, and possibly even more, the social history of this house. So Henry was part of this gang of like Boston Brahmin blue blood misfits. So they were all gay or childless artists who came from great wealth but weren't totally on the inside. And they called themselves Dabbsville. D-A-B-S was the last name, the initial of the beginning of the last name of each of the core members of Dabbsville. And so they would hang out at this place and have great parties. And the legend goes that Harry, let's call him Harry, the reason he built Beauport was because he was in love with this guy, Andrew Piatt, who was a professor at Harvard and a very magnetic, exciting sounding guy. Like, I think we all would have fallen in love with him. And I think it was unrequited, but it was next door to his house. And so Harry got to hang out with Andrew a lot in Gloucester, do all of the socializing they did. So I just love this gang. And here we have the famous Japanese philosopher, historian, Okakura Kakuzo, who's famous for the Book of Tea, which you might know. But those are other members of Dabbsville. So fun time.
Trip Evans, who's curating this exhibition in Beauport as one of the properties, says that all of Beauport is really an act of seduction of Sleeper toward Andrew.
Oh, great.
That he just kept trying to top himself to impress Andrew with his brilliance and make a comfortable place for his guest. So it's kind of, and it will be interesting to see how the whole thing unfolds and what actually Tripp describes for us in the book.
I can't wait. Oh yeah, so this is the room I know the least about, but this is this like very ostentatious living room space.
Well, it's really one of the most magnificent rooms in the mansion. And this paper, Sleeper bought this Chinese scene image at the end of when he came back from World War I, and it had never been used, and used it to decorate this rather grand living room. The house was sold to Woolworth heiress, and that's where her married name is McCann. Which is why it's called the Sleeper-McCann House. And the McCanns really appreciated what they had purchased after Sleeper's death and kept everything intact. So very little was changed by the family that then occupied the house for many, many years after Sleeper died. So it's quite astonishing to have this room and have it just as Sleeper had fully imagined it.
This is the Mariner's room, and it was the last room that he added to this house, and it's the most overt showroom of all the houses. So another way I guess he was seducing Andrew, and he was also showing off his abilities as an interior decorator, and so his whole house was a showroom. He was the most widely published decorator of the period in all of the national magazines at the time. And so here, and then this is a collection of his glassware, just everyday, ordinary glass. So just, I really love that about him, his passion for the everyday and the ordinary. And and so this Mariner's room is a showroom, and you can tell when you're in it because of the way that the lamps are connected, the cords are hidden perfectly. So it's ready for a photo shoot. Yeah, and that's like 190 pieces of ordinary glass.
This is an astonishing experience. How many of you have been to Beauport? I know that our folks have. It's an astonishing experience seeing this and seeing the amber glass or this amber glass collection. And at Characteristic Sleeper, there are some very valuable pieces in here, and there are some pieces that aren't worth anything. And it didn't really matter to him. It was really about the shape and color, the relationship with one another, how they would display, the feeling you would get when you imagined it. And so it's one of the most photographed sort of walls or areas, certainly of the mansion. But to see it in person is actually more fantastic than seeing it in a slide, in my view.
Yeah, I'd say that the whole experience of the house is it's almost impossible to capture in photographs because it's so big. There are so many rooms. There's so many elements, but it feels so intimate, and it's really special. This is the I forget what this room is called. The Belfry. Thank you. And so this is Zubar. How do you say it? Wallpaper that he meticulously cut because of all of these strange corners in this specific room, and he would decoupage some of the elements to make sure that it all worked. And this is we're going to see other instances of this sea green, but he really loved this particular color, and it's in the house a lot. Oh, is this the strawberry room? But I think that was where his mother lived, and then after she died, he took over that room as his. Yeah. This is the book tower, his massive collection of books. And so this is a colonial era replica fireplace situation that he built. And
it was the pine kitchen was actually salvaged from the Barker house, which was his mother's ancestral home. And so he took the material from the Barker house and created a kitchen, which ultimately became one of the most popular commissions in his practice. People wanting to have something like the pine kitchen that was at Beauport. We have another property just up the road on Cape Ann called Cogswell's Grant, and Beauport Sleeper also removed prior to historic New England owning it, of course, removed elements of the house at Cogswell's Grant to use that material within Beauport. So he had an extraordinary eye for taking the material, the aesthetic that made other places special, and transporting those things to his vision in Gloucester.
This is, I forget what this room is called.
It's the room with a view.
Yes, yeah. It's just called the green room. And part of what is really astonishing about this room is this central diamond paned window is on pulleys and it sinks into the foundation. He designed it in 1921 after the 1918 influenza pandemic, and when open air spaces were all the rage. So that was exciting to see, for obvious reasons, but just overlooking the harbor, and then just the sea green everywhere, all the furniture, all of the dinnerware in this room. It kind of reminds me of Martha Stewart. And oddly enough, I didn't understand how beautiful this area was that I'd grown up in until I was living in New York City, and Martha Stewart Living sent me to cover Cogswell's Grant. And so I had to be on a train, back to Cape Ann, being paid for by somebody else. And I was like, whoa, this is so beautiful. I had no idea. It was, I just thought it was boring old home.
Well, Sleeper's use of seafoam green is somewhat like Stewart's use of gray. When we were visiting the Armani silos or museum in Milan, maybe some of you have been there, and the head curator was giving us a tour of the museum, which is laid out chronologically to correspond with Armani's a career. And then at one moment during this rather grand tour, looking at all these beautiful dresses and everything, there was a mic drop moment with a great buildup when the curator told us that Mr. Armani had created Grage. And we were really just knocked out by that. We couldn't believe it. We couldn't believe it for a lot of reasons. But anyway, so Sleeper's Grage with seafoam green.
Yeah, just another gorgeous shot of the harbor.
Oh, Gloucester Harbor really is magnificent, and this eastern point is, they knew how to pick the locations in those days when they were making these, creating these properties. It's really quite something. For sit on for a while. Those of you that know Gloucester, this house is roughly within walking distance of Rocky Neck. So it's just up the road, the Arts Colony, famous Gloucester Arts Colony. Want to stay on them? We can stay on them. They're a fascinating lot.
Yeah.
Well, Kate, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. This was Kate's idea, so let's hear it for Kate. She's an amazing writer.
And now let's hear it for Vin for all of this incredible work that he's doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for being here. Thank you.